Okay, this video is the truth about atrial fibrillation, and today is March 9th, 2025. So this is state-of-the-art information on AFib. A tiny bit of background for newbies, and then we'll get into some new interesting stuff that nobody knows about AFib. Okay, so AFib means atrial fibrillation. You have poor conduction in the atria, and thus they don't contract in good temporal fashion to adequately fill the ventricles. So you get irregular rhythm, irregularly irregular, and because you got sluggish flow, you're more likely to form clots in the atrial appendage on the side here of the left atrium, and you'll potentially toss those up to the brain and have a stroke. If you ask a neurologist what's the most common cause of stroke, some of them will say AFib. That means big strokes, big clot tossed up, big stroke, MCA, middle cerebral artery stroke. They'll also say diabetes, smaller strokes, and hypertension, smaller strokes typically, rarely an intracranial bleed. All right, but anyways, AFib is bad, and they'll often put people on lifelong anticoagulation, which is a pain in the butt. So here's the first interesting thing about it is, here, let me shrink my picture here, is increased intake of monosodium glutamate increases your risk of AFib. And nowadays it's more manufactured free glutamate, MFG. But the point is, you don't want to be eating processed food. It's full of this stuff. It's full of it, and they'll even have multiple sources of it to hide it from you just how much it is, because it tastes good, and it gets you addicted to all this crap. Okay, the next one is, okay, here's just another paper. Also, MSG lowers fertility. What a perfect food and processed food. I mean, the goal of those rich companies, they want to make you fat, sick, and stupid and infertile. You're just a livestock slave to them, dummy. Okay, just like I said, MSG is toxic, okay, and they used to put this in all the baby foods, all right? So it's in all the processed food. Just almost every single processed food has some variation of MSG in it, MFG. Okay, here's just one paper on omega-3s are associated with atrial fibrillation, okay? Omega-3 supplements are associated with increased likelihood of atrial fibrillation for people with high blood lipids, a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials in the European Heart Journal, okay? Omega-3 supplementation, okay, and it just goes on and on. Wait till you see the next paper here. So this is something in, I think it's the American Heart Journal, JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association. In 2019, the global market for omega-3s was $4.1 billion, expected to double by 2025. This paper was written in 2021. So this is a giant thing, and you know, there's tons of people promoting omega-3s, and that's such a crock of BS, okay? There's been a whole bunch of studies, including randomized clinical trials, showing that atrial fibrillation increases the risk of, that omega-3 supplements increase the risk of AFib. Okay, here's one of them summarized: increased risk of developing AFib compared to corn oil. It was worse than corn oil, a piece of crap omega-6 oil. Omega-3s were worse for causing AFib. And here's another one: significant increase in the risk of AFib with omega-3 fatty acids compared with mineral oil. You know, why don't you compare it to a dog turd, okay? Omega-3s are a joke. It's only for chumps. Okay, there's a significant risk of, okay, here's the next one. Patients who had recent myocardial infarction randomized to receive intermediate dose omega-3 fatty acids, combination of EPA and DHA, or corn oil. After 2 years, no significant difference between the groups in primary composite cardiovascular endpoints. So it didn't protect their heart at all. And then it said 7.2% of the omega-3 fat group versus 4% of the corn oil developed AFib. So it's worse than corn oil for causing AFib. Okay, this is your big health supplement. After a median of 5 years, another study, incidence of AFib was 7.2 per 1,000 persons, and those taking omega-6 compared to those taking some placebo. What was the placebo? Well, it just says placebo. I don't know what the placebo was. But trial after trial, it increases the risk of AFib. Omega-3s for chumps. Okay, it suppresses your immune system, increases the risk of prostate cancer, increases the risk of obesity. That's for chumps. Increases the risk of atherosclerosis. Just more nonsense. Okay, here you go. This is more fun stuff. Just see what a crock of BS conventional medicine is. Association of depression, antidepressants, and atrial fibrillation risk. Okay, so these antidepressants, SSRIs, they increase your risk of atrial fibrillation. Here's another paper. Association of antidepressants with atrial fibrillation and ventricular arrhythmias. They showed that the antidepressants were associated with increased risk of atrial fibrillation. Not with ventricular arrhythmia, but yes, for risk of AFib. Okay, so how bad is that? Unlike the way some people tell you, oh, omega-3s improve aging, prevent dementia. Bullshit. How is atrial fibrillation going to prevent dementia? It generates two major risk factors. Number one, when you got Afib, you got suboptimal pumping of blood to the heart, chronic cerebral hypotension, Jack Delatory theory of dementia. Okay, I call it the mouse equivalent theory. Chronic cerebral hypoperfusion, AFib, that increases your risk of dementia dramatically, okay? Bullshit, okay? What else does it do? It also causes your risk of stroke. Stroke causes increased risk of dementia. So two major increased risk factors for dementia, and that's going to prevent your risk, lower your risk of dementia. BS, okay? You should know how to call BS. Be a stupid pro, I mean... Okay, fluoxetine. Fluoxetine is one of your standard common, that's Prozac, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. A review of its toxicological effects. Amongst other terrible side effects, triggering apoptosis, killing cells, it alters mitochondrial function, modulating the activity of respiratory chain components. Do you understand the whole foundation of life is to have energy coming from your mitochondria? Any drug that inhibits your mitochondria is a bad drug, all right? And Prozac, there's a bunch of other ones. Here's a whole bunch of other antidepressants. Trazodone, all these other drugs, bupropion, they're all inhibited mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial complexes 1 and 4. So do you understand how funny this is? These jerks are lying to the public, trying to sell them these drugs, telling them that they're good for their brain, and they inhibit mitochondria. And the brain is the most super dependent part of the body on mitochondrial function. Okay, that's why I tell you, the great psychiatrists, they say all these psychiatric drugs cause a slow lobotomy. They cause brain damage. They're damaging your brain cells, destroying your brain cells. Okay, they're for chumps. So don't be a stupid chump. Okay, and then here's what I thought was funny. I talked about the mitochondrial dysfunction. So here's this guy. He says, you see these papers, and as soon as I heard, the antidepressants were causing atrial fibrillation, I thought immediately of the mitochondrial dysfunction. So just type it in your computer browser. You can check all these papers. There's a whole bunch more. I just didn't have time. I get done home late from work. I got to throw this together real fast. Role of mitochondrial dysfunction, atrial fibrillation. Okay, mitochondrial dysfunction causes AFib. Remember how I've taught you that there's tons of mitochondrial inhibitors, and your doctors don't know any of them because it's not in any of the books. I own a bunch of biochem books. It's not in any of my biochem books. Okay, another paper: mitochondrial dysfunction and AFib mechanisms. Okay, do you understand how funny this is? How basically you're being poisoned and you're too stupid to know it, and all these poisons are accumulating. Okay, you can say, well, maybe I can get a hold of this atrazine sprayed on, non-organic corn, glyphosate sprayed on non-organic soy, the wonder food everybody recommends, soy. What a piece of crap that is. Heavy metals, cadmium polluting a lot of foods, lead polluting a lot of foods, F- in your water. Al is also a mitochondrial toxin. That's in your tap water in most places. Hydroxynonenal from omega-6 cooking oils. Sat fat especially, but fat in general, causing insulin resistance. HG in your high fructose corn syrup. Trichloroethylene at your dry cleaner. Okay. And then you say, this is just warming up. Look at there's tons more. There's over 60 of them that I found. Okay. Here's just some more of them for a little warm up. You ever heard of this medicine for diabetes called metformin? Inhibits complex 1 of electron transport in mitochondria. You ever heard of this one? Statins for high cholesterol. Inhibits coenzyme Q in your intermitochondrial membrane. You ever heard of propofol, a real common anesthetic? Okay. You ever heard of fluoroquinolone antibiotics, aminoglycoside antibiotics, beta-lactam, penicillin antibiotics? Okay, great. Isn't this wonderful? BPA, the artificial plastic and all the substitutes, BPS, etc. Mitochondrial inhibitors. POFA on your nonstick cookware, mitochondrial inhibitors. Antifungals in all the processed food. Antifungal means mold inhibitor. They put that in there so it doesn't spoil and get returned to the company. What I'm telling you is this stuff is so common. The only way you're going to win is be a minimalist. And drinking alcohol also ends up the inhibition of Krebs cycle, so it's a mitochondrial inhibitor. Not the electron transport chain, but it's still a mitochondrial function inhibitor. You want to be simple. Live like Adam and Eve, but keep your indoor heating and plumbing. This is the way to be smart and avoid this crap. Now, here's a whole bunch of stuff on AFib. I'm not going to go into all this. I give them previous lectures on it. I'll say a few things. If you have AFib, you want to get your act together as fast as possible. The longer you have AFib, the more likely it is to become permanent. As the famous EPS cardiologist John Day says, AFib begets AFib. So the guy's real bright, wrote a good book on AFib, but then, like an idiot, he recommends a Mediterranean diet, which shows he's just lazy. He hasn't done his homework to study it. Okay, obesity increases risk of AFib if you got big epicardial fat pads, which tons of patients have. We see it on chest x-rays all the time. We usually dictate it as normal variant, prominent, left or right epicardial fat pad. It ain't really normal. It's more stress on the heart. It's another sign of a lot of visceral fat and high hyperlipidemia. Okay, diabetes, risk of the AFib, excessive dietary fat, meat, oil, mitochondrial inhibitors, hypertension, all this real common stuff. Any type of cardiac disease, valve disease, CHF, all these clotting problems we talked about it, postprandial endotoxemia from eating a high-fat diet with amyloid clotting, LPS in the blood. Stupid. Being iron overloaded also causes amyloid clotting. Neutrophil nets, high fat activates your neutrophils. They start releasing their nets, nutricell, extracellular traps, and that's prothrombotic, and that can increase your risk of cardiac ischemia, microvascular angina, also called coronary artery syndrome X for people with clean epicardial coronaries and cardiac angina. Okay, a lot of women get that. Okay, alcohol drinking, sedentary lifestyle. Exercise is good to prevent AFib, but not excessive. If you don't want to be running marathons or triathlons. Some people can get away with that, but a lot of people, if they do that, they can run into problems with that. Okay, there are problems with that excessive exercise. Okay, CKD, chronic kidney disease, COPD, emphysema can cause cardiac hypoxia. Sleep apnea can cause cardiac hypoxia. It's a long story, but if you go through all the physiology of it, it can cause elevated right heart pressures and dilate the right ventricle and cause AFib. Air pollution can increase the risk of AFib. Drinking caffeine increase AFib risk. Tobacco, amphetamine, sleep deprivation, working the night shift, excessive psychological stress, hyperthyroidism like from Graves' thyrotoxicosis. Circa inhibitors will do it. Anything that smells bad, basically. Oxybenzone and sunscreens, flame retardants, paints, glues, anything that smells bad, think of it as being a Circa inhibitor until proven otherwise. Okay, things that cause leaky gut, we've gone through all that on plenty of other times. So what do you want to do? Same old story, eat the low fat, low sodium, low protein, 100% whole food, 100% organic diet, get mild to moderate exercise, adequate sleep, avoid all this fancy stuff, avoid all processed food, all meat, all oils. Manage your stress, have positive social relationships, have a purpose in life, and be religious. All the major religions are healthier. And what are you going to do if you go down the medical route? There's different sets of blood medications they can treat you on. They can put you on something like a beta blocker for rate control. They can potentially take you for cardioversion. They could potentially do an ablation. But that's a pretty big procedure. You might need it, but it's a pretty big procedure. Why not fix the problem yourself if that's possible with healthy diet and lifestyle? So anyways, I thought that would be interesting to people to see omega-3s are associated with AFib, antidepressants associated with AFib, MSG, MFG associated with AFib. Anyways, I hope you found that helpful.